7 playoff spots have been secured entering Week 16, and another could be locked up tonight. But how can Bo Nix and the Broncos beat the Chargers to punch their ticket? Bridget Condon is on the field ahead of this tasty TNF tilt. Lions coach Dan Campbell had a strong message this week about Detroit persevering in the face of an onslaught of injuries and adversity. But what's the formula to take care of business on Sunday in Chicago? Stacey Dales will be there and here to tell you the latest from Allen Park. There are so many rivalry games this week, and none better than an AFC North showdown on Saturday. Ravens, Steelers, sub-freezing temperatures in Baltimore. Playoff football is practically underway, so clear your weekend calendar. The iPads can parent your kids for a couple of days. Welcome inside with the Insiders alongside Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo. I am Tom Pelissero. We got so much action. I just gave you a few of the games to look forward to. We got the latest on Patrick Mahomes' status for their game on Saturday. We'll hit on some of the other big matchups. We've got fantasy insight, a whole lot more. But let's start out by going right out to SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles because we've got this matchup tonight being promoted. I know those are the Oregon helmets, but it kind of looks like the movie poster for Face-Off, right? Or maybe it's a Tron homage. All right, we're playing up the Oregon angle. We get it. Bo Nix was there for a couple of years. Justin Herbert, basically from there. But tonight, he's here. His new home at SoFi Stadium. Great musical turn on that as well. And right now, let's go out to the field because Bridget Condon is there. Set the scene for me, Bridget, inside SoFi Stadium ahead of a really big Thursday night game.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it. I've been hearing all week there's a big game here at SoFi Stadium. Look, both of these teams can clinch a spot in the playoffs with just 3 games to go. They're both coming into tonight, though, on opposite ends of the spectrum. For the Broncos, they've won 4 straight. The Chargers, they've dropped 2 in a row. Let's start with the Broncos. A win tonight. They're into the playoffs for the first time since winning Super Bowl 50 way back during the 2015 season. I talked with offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, and he told me the level of urgency could not be higher. He said the belief in the locker room and in the city of Denver is so strong, but he also said, look, if we don't take care of business these next 3 games, none of that even matters. Then for the Chargers, they're trying to get into the playoffs with a win tonight. They would need some help. A loss from the Colts and the Dolphins this weekend, and a win tonight would get them in. They're coming off a terrible loss to the Buccaneers on Sunday. Justin Herbert says, look, we play for these kind of opportunities. Derwin James echoing that same sentiment, saying nobody's pointing fingers, nobody's panicking after that loss on Sunday, but you can see there's a sense of urgency on guys' faces, and they're hungry to come show that what they did Sunday is not what they can do. Tom?
Bridget, thank you very much. A lot more from you on this game in just a little bit. You mentioned those clinching scenarios for both these teams. It's very straightforward for Denver. Beat the Chargers tonight, and they are back in the playoffs, or they'd also get in if basically all the other teams in the AFC wildcard race lose. The Chargers are in with a win plus losses by both the Colts and the Dolphins. In Broncos, it's been a while since they were in the postseason here. Sean Payton has obviously done a lot of work. They seem to have the right quarterback in place, not just for this year, but years to come.
Yeah, I was looking at you promo that matchup, and obviously the poster is just immaculate, as they always are. But I remember looking at this game as you kind of scan this. Don't laugh, it's a great poster. As I scan the schedule before the season starts, looking at this one being like, like, I wonder what this is going to be, because to me, in my head before the season, this was a Broncos team that was probably going to win maybe a game or 2 more than the previous year, but probably a year or maybe 2 away, and then the Chargers, maybe the same thing. No, this came much, much quicker for both of these teams than I think anyone anticipated. And I want to focus on the Broncos here because, first of all, they do have the quarterback, and that's a great place to start, right? I mean, for all the people who wondered about Bo Nix maybe being a second rounder, being a late first rounder, and then Sean Payton picks him earlier than anyone else probably would have picked him, and he has been so perfect for everything Sean Payton wants to do. He's smart, he's athletic, he gets the ball where he needs to go, and he unloads it. I mean, this is everything that Sean Payton looks for. The thing that strikes me is this is too early. Like, the Broncos have so much more in store for us. Like, they are just getting started. And, you know, there's a lot of optimism with this team. There should be a lot of optimism with this team. But based on what Sean Payton did in New Orleans, based on what he's been able to do so early with this team, Mike, I would expect a lot more Broncos talk over the next couple of years and a lot more times late season talking about very good Broncos teams.
And now we got to look at this, how good can the Chargers be after a really disappointing performance? Bridget alluded to it the other day in a game that really they should have won. They were expected to win in that game. And now you've got Jim Harbaugh on a short week trying to get these guys right and get their minds right. I've heard it so much this year. I've covered so many Thursday games from teams saying, hey, we're glad to be getting back on the field so quickly after a disappointing game the other day. Usually you got to wait the entire week, so Thursday games can be good in that regard. I think you're going to see that from the Chargers, a team that has been so sound this year, so well coached this year, so well prepared in their execution and forcing teams to beat them. It was like the opposite of that team that we saw the other day. It was such an anomaly performance from them. So I would expect Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman and all these guys, Jesse Minter on the defensive side of the ball. These are all really good coaches. I would expect them to have this team ready to go tonight.
If you haven't already set your fantasy lineups, now would be a good time to do so, because not only do we have a Thursday night game, we got two games on Saturday, and it seems like you can safely put Patrick Mahomes, if you want to, if you trust the production, in your starting lineup. He's officially off the injury report just days after aggravating that ankle once again when he got folded up like an accordion in their game. Good to go on Saturday against the Chiefs. Andy Reid said that, once again, this is sort of a remarkable recovery for Patrick Mahomes, who has done this time and again. No such injury luck at this point for the Detroit Lions, who seemingly have lost every member of their defense to various injuries. They had their 11-game win streak snapped in a shootout loss last week to the Buffalo Bills. But Dan Campbell certainly tried to fire up the fans in a radio appearance a couple of days ago, and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn following suit.
We're 12-2, and the sky's falling. We're going to the playoffs. We're in the dance. We're in the tournament. Why in the hell is the sky falling for us? What do we have to sit back and be sad? I mean, we leave it to you guys. We let you guys do that. Our job is to go play football, and that's what we're going to continue to do. All right? We lost one game. Well, 2 games. We lost 2 games. We have a chance to win out, all right, and accomplish everything that we want to accomplish. So why should we sit back and wallow and think the sky's falling? It's dumb.
They've lost 2 games, but like 24 guys to injured reserve, Ian. It is decimated, particularly on Aaron Glenn's side of the football, as the Lions try to pull this thing together, knowing they've still got a path, win these next 3, and they're NFC North champs, quite possibly the #1 seed.
You know, back when I covered Nick Saban at Alabama, one of the most important lessons I learned is when a coach stands at that podium and he speaks to the media in a way that maybe you wouldn't expect. Like, yeah, they've lost a lot of injuries, but we don't care, or, you know, whatever it was. He's not talking to us, the media. He's talking to his team in the locker room. And for Aaron Glenn, who really is one of the better leaders you've seen as a defensive coordinator, and someone who I believe, and I think you guys also believe, will be a head coach at some point either this year or in the near future, he is speaking to his locker room. And this really is the refrain from inside the building. Yeah, they've lost guys. Get it. Everyone loses guys. Have they lost more than others? Yes, they probably have. But they are good. The sky is not falling. They are resilient. They are tough. And they're ready to go. And that is exactly what Dan Campbell has said, whether it's on the radio, again, speaking through the radio to his team in the locker room, or whether it's Aaron Glenn standing up there and talking to the media, knowing his team is going to listen. There's going to be a lot of time for a lot of people to discuss all the injuries. We do it plenty. We will do it for them. But for them, most important thing for the Lions is they are still good. They still have a shot to do everything they wanted. And even with the injuries, Mike, they're probably in a better situation than most of the teams they're facing.
Yeah, and there's 2 reasons that they're confident. One, they feel like they do a really good job of finding the personnel that matches what they do. So some of these guys that they're going to be relying upon are guys that fit their scheme and are asked to do what they do and what they deem is necessary for successful football. So every team kind of feels that way. I get that, right? That you got these guys that you compiled in the late rounds, your undrafted free agents, your guys off the street, that we do a better job of that. But obviously Detroit feels confident in that. That's one. Number two is the mental toughness. You keep hearing Dan Campbell say, we're built for this, we're built for this, we're built. Well, along the way, you've got to be built to deal with this kind of adversity. And I know it's a lot. It really is. And this is not going to be the same Lions team without all these key players. Like, you just can't, you're not going to be able to get to that point. But you were whooping teams with a full Lions team. Now all you got to do is beat them by 1 point, right? You'll take that the rest of the way with this Lions team. And there's also the other thing of Aiden Hutchinson and his possible return hanging out there. You get him back, that'd almost be like getting two guys back. He's that good, potentially. So all that math that I just threw out there, maybe it doesn't add up. Maybe I'm trying to say 1 + 1 = 3, but that's what you have to do if you're Aaron Glenn, if you're Dan Campbell, if you're anybody on that coaching staff and inside that building, getting this team ready to play.
You mentioned 2 reasons, Mike, to still believe in the Lions. I'll give you a few more. 3, Jared Goff. 4, Ben Johnson. 5, Jahmyr Gibbs. 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown. 7, Penei Sewell. Their offense, they just lost David Montgomery. We'll see if there's a possibility he could get back at some point here. But they're still really talented. That game they lost, they scored 40-plus points. Again, this might have to be a team that goes from being the gritty one that can win a couple of different ways to every game just trying to plaster that thing together the best that they can defensively and outscore everybody. That was not supposed to be the formula for the New York Jets, which is part of the reason that the season has gone south. The defense, of course, has struggled. And Aaron Rodgers, at least up until last week, had fallen well short of expectations. Now, we did get a glimpse, at least a 1-week fountain of youth for Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. Rodgers has mused on both sides of the possibility of playing for 2025, of playing for the Jets in 2025, and apparently also perhaps mentoring a young QB behind him.
You know, I think all of us, whether we got a guy behind us itching to play or not, there's, you know, when they drafted Jordan, I felt like I was one bad stretch from being benched, you know, and I, won MVP a couple of years, so. That's the way the league is. You got to prove it. You can play every single week and through stretches. So if they asked me back and they drafted a guy, I'd mentor the hell out of him if I was playing, and I'd try and play as well as I could to keep him on the bench.
Take a look at the draft order as it stands right now. The Jets, despite being 4-10, would currently own the 8th overall pick because there are 7 teams with either 2 or 3 wins. Jets, by virtue of getting that win last week, knocked themselves down a handful of spots here. Aaron Rodgers essentially, Mike, seems to be talking on both sides of everything that he was asked. It's, would you consider taking a pay cut? Sure, I'd talk about that. I'd talk about anything. He's keeping all options on the table. Hard to imagine after everything that's happened that Aaron Rodgers will be back in a Jets uniform in 2025. But there are so many other questions that are going to dictate that. This is going to be a fascinating offseason in New York.
I've got this game on Sunday, the Jets against the Rams, and starting to talk to some folks about the situation, the vibes. They say it's good regarding Aaron Rodgers. They say he's got a little bit of motivation going on. We saw it against the Jaguars, the way that he and Davante Adams connected late in the game. He's in a weird spot. He is trying to play for his job, really, for the first time in his career, in a season down the stretch here that is meaningless from a playoff standpoint. And if you see more of that connection with Davante Adams and those little spurts that we've seen, go back to week 1 against the 49ers when we saw it very briefly. If you can somehow see this right here on display the next couple of weeks consistently, regardless of who the head coach or the general manager is coming in, they're going to have to take a hard look at that and say, well, maybe he's healthier. Look at him. Look how spry he is, back to doing his celebration with the fist in the air. I talked to one of his offensive linemen, John Simpson, about this just earlier today, and he said he's making plays he couldn't make earlier in the year. He's a lot healthier than he was earlier in the year, and I know we've talked about that, and it's been like, oh, is this excuse-making or whatnot? Rodgers can make a point that, yeah, I am healthier down the stretch here. And as far as the mentoring goes, he did try to do that and attempted to do it with Zach Wilson. Didn't work out because he wasn't playing, so I think that whole thing got screwed up. But it's not surprising to me, and I do believe him, that he'd be willing to take on that role as a mentor.
And it did sound like the Rodgers relationship with Jordan Love was a pretty good one, even though, so Mike, you mentioned that, Rodgers in unfamiliar territory playing for his job. you listen to the words that he said today, listen to the words that he said the last couple of years, like he feels like this all the time. And I think the really good ones feel like this. I remember when the Patriots drafted Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady felt like he had to keep him on the bench and keep playing for his job. And I feel like that mentality is probably pretty familiar to these super competitive guys who never want to give up any snaps, never want to come off the field, never want to give anyone a chance to show that they are better than these guys are. And so, for me, this was a really easy decision for the Jets probably a couple weeks ago. Cut Aaron Rodgers, obviously, you move on, you have a new coach, GM, you start with a new quarterback. If he's going to keep playing like this, he's going to make it a lot tougher. And let's say the Jets draft a quarterback early. Let's say they draft one in the first round. Well, is he going to come in and play? If he's not, then you're going to need a bridge quarterback to come in and play while he waits and learns. And they have one. It's just his name might be Aaron Rodgers. I mean, his name is Aaron Rodgers. I'm just saying he might be the bridge quarterback. Rodgers keeps playing like this, bottom line, it's going to be a far more in-depth and complicated situation than they imagined a couple weeks ago.
All the scientific data also would say the second year after an Achilles injury, you're going to be a lot closer to being at full health. Aaron Rodgers seems to be looking better physically over the course of time here, though he will turn 42 during next season. Anytime you're an older quarterback, including one coming off an Achilles injury, there's always the possibility the team's going to be looking for your successor. Sometimes, like Rodgers, you see it coming. Other times, not so much.
The Atlanta Falcons are considering Michael Penix at number 8. And I know they signed Kirk Cousins, gave him $100 million guaranteed. It is all about succession at the most important position. A lot of people think they're going to take a defensive player, maybe edge. Michael Penix is very firmly in the mix for the Atlanta Falcons.
How about them apples?
I was wondering when the chaos was going to start. Apparently now. Hat tip to Ian. Ian said this hours ago.
Yeah.
Brought this up.
He set it up as a possibility.
If this is the way this goes.
Okay.
Are really going to do this? And whatever happened to the edge rusher? I thought that's where we were going with Atlanta.
Here we go.
With the 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Michael Penix Jr.
Well, there it is.
Quarterback, Washington.
That is the first surprise of the NFL Draft, to say the least.
Still one of the most shocking picks in recent years. And this is a development that was surprising even to the people who picked it. Michael Penix Jr. going into Week 16 has now been named the starting quarterback, with Kirk Cousins headed to the bench, with Atlanta still alive in the playoff chase. As we bring in our Brian Baldinger and Mark Ross. Baldy, you watched this play out. We always knew that this was a possibility, but it wasn't something that was front burner for them to do in 2025. As you look at the landscape of where the Falcons are right now making this move, what do you think?
I don't think they had a choice. This wasn't a slump by Kirk Cousins. This was a rapid decline. And I thought that they might make this choice. We talked about it before the Minnesota and Atlanta game a couple weeks ago, Tom. I thought this was a real possibility. And I've had guys within the organization sending me clips of him in practice. It's practice, but it looks a lot different than what we've seen from Kirk in the game. And we watched him on Monday night against the Raiders. He cannot get away from any kind of a rush. Anything that comes down on top of him, he has an inability to escape. Michael Penix is an elite athlete with an elite arm. One thing that was interesting, just watching this offense, is they've been a shotgun offense almost primarily all year. And in the 20 pass dropped the other day, Kirk Cousins was in shotgun 18 out of 20. That's not what he was in Minnesota. But it'd be interesting to see if he's been in shotgun because maybe he can't push off that Achilles the way he once did. Maybe it doesn't allow him to get to the drop that he wants to. And it'll be interesting to see if Michael Penix is under center with some of these play action passes they would like, because they've got a very good running attack. Bijan's having a great season. The offensive line is not an issue. But getting the ball down the field, getting explosive plays is. And I believe Michael Penix can provide that with their outside chance of making these playoffs to win out and get a little help from Tampa here. I think this is the one shot they have right now.
Part of the reason this was so shocking is the contract and the way they had structured it, the commitment they made to Kirk Cousins just about 6 weeks before drafting Michael Penix Jr. This is an abbreviated version of a lengthy post that I made on X trying to explain basically there's no good options. The best ones would be you release him before next March 16th, because that's when another $10 million bonus would end up becoming fully guaranteed. If the other option would be to trade him, but Mark, he has a no-trade clause. Cousins can effectively veto any deal. You owe him $27.5 million fully guaranteed in 2025, which is not bad if he's going to be your starting quarterback. The question becomes, is he playing at a level that somebody's going to want him to be the starting quarterback in 2025? And does Kirk even go along with the trade or just say, hey, you can pay me that to back up Penix, or else go ahead and release me. I'll pick where I go.
Well, from the Falcons' perspective, you're just trying to choose the lesser of all evils and save money to this point of saying, well, we made this huge mistake and we've allocated so much money to Kirk. What do we do now? Well, and it's also, as you saw from the Penix clip, they're taking Penix and giving Kirk that money in the first place. There always might be a team out there, even though we're looking at the landscape now and say there's absolutely no way other teams are watching this film of Kirk Cousins and saying we're going to trade for him. Because of the desperation of the quarterback market, because of this draft class, quarterbacks not being that great, it only takes one team and one GM and one head coach to say, we can still salvage Kirk. And as long as Kirk and his agent, Mike McCartney, the best agent in the league, who everyone should be flocking to get this man all this money, as long as they say, you know what, this is another situation where we can go get a lot more money. It's 27.5 that a team will owe him next year, but they could rework something there with the new team. That's an option. We saw the options there, Tom, that you laid out perfectly as far as cutting him and how much money Atlanta will save. So they're really talking about all of this these next few weeks. And there's still the option on the table, even though it doesn't seem likely that they could keep him. Because say Michael Penix, I know Baldy waxed poetically about how great Michael Penix is, and I completely agree. He could go out there and crush it. What if he goes out there and plays bad, and the brain trust of the Falcons say, well, wait a minute now. We still have to keep Kirk around here another year just to give him another chance. You know what? He might be healthy next year and keep him around, fellas. So still a lot of options on the table for Atlanta the rest of the year with Kirk.
I would also remind everyone, we were sitting here almost exactly 1 year ago talking about a former Pro Bowl quarterback in his mid-30s with a bunch of guaranteed money left who looked like he was finished that ended up having to get released. It's worked out pretty well for Russell Wilson and the Steelers having him there on a minimum deal. If you're Kirk Cousins, you're thinking, that might be the best path for me. Where would that be, and can he achieve that same level? We're about to find out. Baldy, Mark, thank you very much. Look forward to chatting with you again very soon. Coming up after this, we're going to talk with this guy, Uchenna Nwosu, who's been through a lot over the past couple of years, also doing great work that earned him a Walter Payton Man of the Year nomination. What's he got next in store on the field? A big game against the Vikings this week. Uchenna will be with us to break it down next on The Insiders. The NFL's highest honor is the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. All 32 teams have a nominee. And in Seattle, it's this man right here, Uchenna Nwosu, who got the nod this year. And what do you know? Uchenna is with us right now on The Insiders alongside me, Tom Pelissero, as well as Mike Garafolo. Uchenna, congratulations. I know this is a big deal for you. Tell me about the work that you've been doing with your foundation and what this award means and what this nomination means to you.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of work. I focus on mainly the youth, the next generation of kids. I try to empower them any way I can. A couple things I've done. I was able to build a training center, athletic training center in my former high school, my alma mater, and provide them with a full-time athletic trainer on staff. I've done camps for youth kids. I've volunteered at Boys and Girls Clubs. I've also done stuff back home in my parents' hometown in Nigeria, providing light there for the villagers. And, the work is just getting started, and we're continuing to grow and do more.
What does it mean for you to be able to give back and to, especially internationally, right? We've got a lot of Walter Payton nominees who do stuff domestically. For you to do it overseas as well, what does it mean for you? What does it do for you as an individual and NFL player?
It means a lot, but honestly, it doesn't do much for me. It's not about me. It's about, the people, the kids, the families out there that are in need. So any way I can try to, give back to them and, make their day a better day, whether that's here domestically or internationally, it means a lot. But again, it's not about me, it's about them. And like I said, we're just continuing to grow and do more as much as we can.
You have tremendous perspective in that regard, Uchenna, and that probably has served you well over the past year or so here, because you've dealt with multiple significant injuries. I can only imagine the physical, mental, emotional toll that takes on anybody going through it. Take me through this journey over these past couple of seasons and also how you're feeling now.
Yeah, the journey's been tough. I would say throughout my career, I've been a pretty healthy, even going back to college, I've been a pretty healthy player. So dealing with these significant season-ending injuries like I did last year was kind of new for me. It was uncharted waters. I didn't really know how to navigate it, really not facing anything like this, but, trusting the doctors and, my rehab plan and, my team being around me, I've always just tried to better myself and just try to continue to stay positive in these moments and knowing that, I'll be able to play my best ball ahead and I'll be back on that field with my teammates and brothers. And that's what I tried to cling on to this process, and I'm happy to be back out there.
I saw something on the Seahawks website about you being back and everything that you've been through, and you sent a message. It was directly to the 12s. What kind of relationship do you have with them, and how important was it for you to tell them directly via the website, hey, I'm back?
It was great. The 12s have embraced me ever since I signed here back in 2022. They've supported me throughout my career, all the injuries. And they're there for us every game. We hear them loud and proud cheering for us. They're like our secret weapon out there, and I have to embrace them any way I can. So, it was a letter to them for supporting me and sticking by me through my career, through my time here in Seattle, especially dealing with those injuries. They're very supportive. A lot of people DM me and check on me and constantly see how I'm doing. So, it's only right for me to say my grace and thanks to them for being by my side throughout these ordeals I've been going through.
Well, you're going to need the 12s extra loud this week because you got a Vikings team coming in that has been red hot. That offense with guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Darnold's playing at a high level. What do you see from them right now on tape, and how do you attack them?
Yeah, they're doing a lot of things well. They run the ball effectively. They throw the ball effectively. So it's going to be another challenge for us. But, that's what we love. We love good challenges. So, just got to go out there and play our game, play our scheme, play fundamentally sound, and, make sure, we're right on the details, and we'll be able to handle this team like we know we can and we're capable of.
Mike Macdonald, his first year as a head coach, I know that they have been impressed and feel really good about the hire there inside that building. The way the season has gone, there's been ups, there's been downs. It's like extended ups. It's almost like phases of the season that's gone along. What's impressed you as you've seen him progress as a head coach that leads you to believe, hey, we're in the right hands down the stretch here with this head coach, Mike Macdonald?
Yeah, his resiliency. He's a coach that doesn't waver. Nothing gets to him. He's always staying positive. He's always encouraging guys. He's always coming up with new ways to try to win. And you love a coach that's constantly thinking and constantly trying to get better, not just for himself, but as a football team. And that's what he's always been doing. He's been doing that so far. He's done a great job. I love playing for him. He's very smart. I consider myself to be a smart player, so I feel like we fit. And yeah, I just can't wait to get back out there and see all of us live out there on Sunday night or Sunday afternoon.
So Mike McDonald, obviously a guy from a defensive background. He's very hands-on with that group. You're looking for that first sack, Uchenna, in a long time. You've been through a lot since. Is Mike trying to get you one? Are you going to scheme up something here to make sure you got favorable matchups to get that quarterback finally?
I mean, you can scheme up whatever you want, in this league, but it's up to the player to be able to, it's up to me to be able to go out there and get it, So I'm working on myself in practice, making sure my body's right, making sure, I'm ready to go, making sure I'm studying extra film. So when that moment comes, I don't miss it.
Uchenna, congratulations again on the Walter Payton Man of the Year nomination for the Seahawks. Best of luck the rest of the way, man. Stay healthy. Go get that sack, all right?
Thank you.
All right, coming up after this, we got other big games around the league in Week 16, including one involving the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. Bo Nix, Justin Herbert. Break down this matchup right after this on The Insiders. Week 16 kicks off right there across the water, SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. Broncos, Chargers, all kinds of playoff implications in this one. And if the Broncos don't win, Bo Nix is going to jump. What are we doing here? Are those tiny giraffes? What are they? Tiny? They're tiny horses. Because he's a young calf himself, a pony. Excuse me. I can't with the Thursday night posters. Every single time they get me. Welcome back to the Insiders. Bridget Condon's at SoFi Stadium. We've also got Brian Baldinger with us. Bridget, last time these teams met, Chargers got out to that big lead. Broncos actually made things interesting in the fourth quarter. What do we expect tonight?
Well, we could expect, I don't know, that picture to replicate itself. There is a lake across the street. But let me just talk about the numbers. If you believe in numbers, we're going to see some defense here tonight. There are 3 teams that currently sit atop the NFL when it comes to points allowed per game. The Eagles, the Chargers, and the Broncos. The Chargers offense has to find a way to get going tonight. They've scored just 17 points in each of their last 3 games, and they face a Broncos defense that leads the league in terms of sacks. 49 sacks so far this team has had. And I talked to left tackle Rashawn Slater about how you get this going, and he told me, well, we have to get our run game going. The team has rushed for less than 100 yards in each of their last 4 games. You run the ball, you control the clock, and you can open up things in the passing game. Of course, their run game has been limited without J.K. Dobbins, who's missed the last 4 games this will be his 4th game with a knee injury. But Slater tells me, I watched the tape. I know we can be a good run team. I know we can dominate in the run game. It just takes one thing to go wrong, and that has been the focus this week, Baldy. Make sure they're paying attention to those small details. Try to get this thing going on the ground.
Well, Bridget, you hit on a lot of things that are real. I saw them last week against Tampa Bay. They didn't run the ball. They look like a 17-point offense. They can't get explosive plays in the passing game right now. Got a couple early to Ladd McConkey, but couldn't get anything after that. But if you look at this diminishing rushing attack that Jim Harbaugh was so high on, it goes right to that first half injury of J.K. Dobbins a month ago against the Ravens. They haven't run for 100 yards. Gus Edwards doesn't look like the explosive back they need if Rashawn Slater and all the guys up front are all doing all the little things right now. They're really struggling to get those kind of yards and to be able to sustain offense by moving it on the ground. And so it's paramount for them, whether it's Kamani or Vidal or whoever this year. Maybe Justin Herbert runs a little bit more with some read options. That's certainly been a part of their offense this season. But explosive plays, they have struggled to get those. And you're going to see a very good Broncos defense out there. I do think this, from the standpoint of the Chargers defense tonight, the Broncos don't run the ball well. And they're struggling to get that. And if you just put the ball in Bo Nix's hands and have him to go win the game. I mean, he threw in 3 interceptions last week. It was uncanny. It was not really what he had been doing, but he made 3 terrible mistakes. They overcame it because of those sacks and what Nick Benito did with interception return for touchdown. But I would say that the Chargers match up really well against this Broncos offense.
Bridget, that Chargers defense had about as much success last week stopping the Bucs as the windscreen on your microphone has of blocking out the screaming PA announcer and the techno music behind you. How do they turn it around tonight?
Well, yeah. I mean, Tom, that was the question in the locker room. I was around this team all week. It was the question to coaches, to Justin Herbert, to everybody in the locker room. How do you fix this defense, especially on a short week? You talk about a Chargers defense that has led the NFL in terms of scoring defense for 13 weeks this season. We're in week 16. That's basically the entire season. They gave up a season-high 40 points Sunday against the Buccaneers. Khalil Mack told me it was a lack of energy, which was kind of interesting to hear him say that. He said we were just going through the motions. It felt just routine. Even when we made a big play, there wasn't energy. So I asked him, I said, well, how do you fix that? He said, I have to be the one to go out there and create the energy, bring the effort, bring the energy. So I asked him again, how do you do that? Khalil Mack is not a guy that's going to be like making a TikTok dance in the locker room before the game or focusing on a turnover celebration this week. And I said, is that what you mean? He goes, no. The only way to create energy is to have fun and go out there and absolutely dominate. And that's what they're hoping for here tonight against the Broncos. And I'll leave you with this, Tom, some more fun numbers for you. The last time the Chargers gave up 40 or more points, the next game they beat a team back in 2021. That team, the Broncos, the very same team they play here tonight. Who knows if that means anything, but it's always fun when those things tie together.
Good stuff, Bridget. Thank you. Baldy, you as well. It's a rivalry week. That's a really tough phrase to say. It's a rivalry week across the NFL, and it doesn't end there. We've also got a great one in the AFC North.
They don't like us. We damn for sure don't like them. Anybody come in our house, they get dealt with. Y'all know what time it is? Y'all hit in the mouth. Yeah. You heard me? Let's go. Come on, boy. Touchdown, Steelers. Ben puts the ball right on the money. Touchdown. You got it.
here.
It is a first-time start for Lamar Jackson against the Steelers. Jackson is unbelievably gifted.
Touchdown, Ravens! Unbelievable.
Classic Ravens Steelers, all kind of hitting.
It was tough to haul down, indeed.
There's some hitting, there's some jawing, there's everything we thought there would be.
Definitely been a physical game.
The Steelers are smelling blood.
He got spin, he's hot. I can smell it.
You got two teams that respect one another but don't like one another.
Everything you got.
Pittsburgh and Baltimore, you don't have to say a whole lot more.
There was some offensive highlights there. I feel like we didn't need any of that. We just needed just hit each other, right? I mean, isn't that what this rivalry is about? Steelers, Ravens, all it is just them colliding into each other at very high speeds at the end. Somebody wins, somebody loses. There are some stakes this weekend, though. For the Steelers, it is very simple as we look at the AFC North clinching scenarios. Win, and they win the North. With the Ravens, they can win the North with a win and some other things. They can clinch a playoff berth with a win and some other things, including a Colts and Dolphins loss. So now let's bring in our good friend Omar Ruiz along with Mark Ross once again. Omar, we will start with you. That video got you hyped, I'm sure, because it got me hyped as well. These rivalry games really don't need a ton of introduction. But what is at stake here for these two teams as they gear up to play this weekend?
Oh, Ian, you're absolutely right about that video firing me up. I can't wait to get on my flight tomorrow. I can't wait to be at that game on Saturday. I haven't covered a Ravens-Steelers game in what feels like a decade by now, but so much at stake, Ian, like you mentioned. The Pittsburgh Steelers, it's a hat and T-shirt game potentially. If they win, they wrap up the AFC North. And Minkah Fitzpatrick told me a little earlier today how gratifying that would be. It would be huge to clinch in their rivals' building. Demoralizing is how he would describe it if they were to win at the Ravens. And this is one of the most fiercest, intense rivalries in all of football. But the Steelers have made it one-sided of late. They've won 8 of 9 in this series. And I asked tight end Pat Freiermuth early in this week, what's been the key to that? Because obviously the Ravens have been good these last 4 or 5 years. Lamar Jackson's won a couple MVPs. And Freiermuth said he attributes it to the coaching style of Mike Tomlin, the way he is singularly focused on this matchup with the Ravens, the game plan, the confidence with which they go in, the preparation that they have, and they're able to execute that in this particular game. I talked to Ravens defensive lineman Nnamdi Madubuike earlier this week, and he said they're not focused on the history. He said the key for them this week was trying to execute at a high level every single practice and then hoping that that translates into playing at a high level on Saturday, and then the rest will take care of themselves. And speaking with Rashad Bateman, the receiver, earlier on his take on why this has been a little one-sided, he feels that the Ravens have beat themselves in these matchups. They're typically tight when these two teams play together, so it comes down to turnovers, not beating themselves, not giving the Steelers extra yardage opportunity for free with those penalties. If they can control all of that, they have a chance to control the game and come out with the win and Mark potentially clinch a spot in the playoffs here on Saturday.
Yeah, Omar, you mentioned all the important elements of this game, and it should be a lot of fun. And you mentioned Mike Tomlin's coaching philosophy. What is one of his mantras? He says, the standard is the standard. And even though this game is important, the standard for these two organizations is to win the Super Bowl and nothing else, really. And for Pittsburgh, despite the lengthy Mike Tomlin win streak there, they haven't won a playoff game since 2016. And the standard for the Steelers fans is, hey, that's all well and good, Mike T, but you better go win a Super Bowl soon. Better go win a playoff game before it, but you better go win a Super Bowl. And then on the flip side, for the Ravens, they've had tons of success as well. And under the Lamar Jackson reign here, despite the 2 MVPs, despite the success in the regular season, once they've gotten to the playoffs, they ultimately have not come through the way the Ravens fans have wanted them to. So on both teams, both different elements of we need to prove a lot more. This game is super important, but the bigger goal is for these organizations is the Super Bowl. If not, for right or wrong, that's just the standard that has been set. The standard is the standard of winning the Super Bowl. This is the first step, but both of these teams have their eye on the bigger picture there, guys.
Yeah, and then, of course, to be able to get to the Super Bowl or continue that march to the Super Bowl, it helps to have good players. It helps to have healthy players. Omar, what have we learned about the health of some key guys leading into this game? T.J. Watt for one, and you mentioned you talked to Rashad Bateman. He's another one.
Yeah, Rashad Bateman's missed practice a couple times this week. We'll have to see if he's able to go on Saturday. We know George Pickens is out for the second game in a row, the star-making Steelers receiver. And then you mentioned T.J. Watt. He is off the game status report, so he will play despite that ankle injury that he suffered last week. He improved all week long in practice. He did not participate on Tuesday. He was limited Wednesday. He was in full today, and he said he will give it a go on Saturday. Obviously, he is huge for this matchup. The Steelers are a completely different team when they don't have T.J. Watt on the field. They are 1-10 in games that T.J. Watt doesn't play, and he has been particularly huge in this matchup. Lamar Jackson has only started 5 games against the Steelers in his career. T.J. Watt has 8.5 sacks in those 5 games. So all over Lamar, and this has been a typical T.J. Watt season. He's leading the league in tackles for loss, leading the league in forced fumbles, hopes to carry that again on Saturday. The Steelers did a great job Week 11 limiting Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry's effectiveness. I talked to Minkah Fitzpatrick how they repeat that, and it's been do what they do at a high level. And a couple things that they do best in the NFL is getting off the field defensively. They lead the league in turnovers. They've taken the ball away 30 times this season, and they get off the field with 3 and outs. More than a quarter of the possessions that they play defensively, they force 3 and outs. They're hoping to do more of that on Saturday.
So many good things to look forward to. Cannot wait for this game, and the fact that we get it a day earlier than usual, just perfect. Omar, Mark, thank you very much for hanging out with us. You can catch the Chiefs and Steelers at 1 p.m. Eastern as part of the doubleheader on Christmas Day, followed by the Ravens and Texans at 4:30 p.m. live on Netflix. Pumped for that one. Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions have certainly been in the news a little bit over the past week, mostly due to injuries, but also because they are coming off the kind of game that they rarely have. We will get a live report from our good friend Stacey Dales to tell us everything she knows about the Lions. Coming up next on The Insiders.
All right, the Lions are, saying they're not going to spend time licking their wounds. They're going to get out there into the elements and get ready to play these Chicago Bears on Sunday. When last saw these teams meet, it was inside on Thanksgiving. It was a close game there. Stacey Dales, you were there that day, I believe, as well. I talked about the Lions licking their wounds. They're never ones to feel sorry for themselves. We heard Aaron Glenn earlier in the show talking about that and saying, well, why would we feel sorry for ourselves? We're in a great situation. What's Dan Campbell's message to the team, knowing that they've suffered all these injuries, but still got to plow forward? Stacey, did we lose her? Is this Dan Campbell's message to the team? Does she have me? Can anyone speak to me? In the control room, can anyone hear me? Am I dead? Is this the Sixth Sense too? Am I talking to dead people? Anyone? All right. Coming up next, we lost Stacey. I mean, we'll get her back. And we're going to talk about Joe Burrow and his gifts for his teammates, his offensive linemen. Very unique. That's coming up next, I think, on the Insiders. Oh, we're back. Boy, we are really sprinting to the finish line here on the Insiders here on Thursday. The Detroit Lions are back in the elements. We lost Stacey Dales. She's okay. We're led to believe something happened with her camera there. Not her fault. Not anybody's fault, really. It's nobody's fault. And it's nobody's fault that the Lions have suffered so many injuries. But that being said, they have to plow forward. They have to play football. Welcome in, Ian Rappaport. Can you hear me, guys? And Tom Pelisseri, you got me. Okay, I got some nods. We're good. Yeah, let's talk about the Lions and what they need to do and what Dan Campbell's message. You guys know Dan Campbell.
Mike,
what would his message be to the team here?
Is Mike talking? I can't hear him.
Stop
talking.
Come on, man. We're very sensitive right now. Talk about the Lions. Go, Tom.
Listen, they've had a lot of injuries up front on that team. This certainly seems like a get-right type of a matchup when you're going into Chicago. Granted, it's going to be cold. But that's a Bears team that's really reeling on both sides of the football. They've not played the same defense since Matt Eberflus got fired. And I was at that game last week against the Vikings. Offensively, they're just kind of disjointed and trying to find themselves right now. Seems like a good week for the Lions to go out and remind everybody that they can outscore just about any opponent, particularly one that's gone through it like the Bears have this season, Ian.
You guys talked about this a couple segments ago, just about how good the Lions have been at finding guys to do exactly what they do. This is a really, really good test. Not that they wanted a test, but this is a really good test for them. They have used this year to get better in some areas. Added Zadarius Smith would be one. They're going to have to find guys off the street, as they've done, off other teams' practice squads, off their own practice squad, put them in here, put them in positions to really play. And some of these guys are going to have to, win the game for them. That is what really good teams do, which is why you get out in the playoffs and you look on the field and you're like, who is that guy making this play? That's what the good teams do. That is a test now for the Lions. And to me, based on how strong their culture is, I would imagine they're in a really good position to do that.
We got a triple header on NFL Network in Week 17. A lot of games with playoff implications, some of them involving the same teams that you're going to be watching. Tonight, we got Chargers, Patriots, Broncos, Bengals, and then a big one potentially in the NFC West, Cardinals, Rams, wrapping things up next Saturday. Not this Saturday, next Saturday, December 28th. Before that, you got the Holiday Remix. That's what we're calling about it. There's going to be candy canes on the jerseys. And yes, I am completely serious about that. A doubleheader this Saturday, then the same teams remixed facing each other on Christmas Day so they have enough time to recover. Kyler Murray, the Cardinals quarterback, getting ready for a relatively rare game in less than ideal weather. Here's what he had to say about it.
If there's no weather on Sunday, if it's a chillier temperature but there's no weather, is that a big deal?
No, I mean, I've played in cold weather before. It's not, I don't know how cold it's supposed to be.
35, 40?
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Ian, we all know what it's like to be cold. I think we all live in the more northern climates here. Kyler had to have played in some colder weather games somewhere along the road, right?
I don't know about that. I mean, college football ends a lot earlier than the NFL does. He's played in plenty of indoor games. I mean, look, I'll say this for Kyler. I have two thoughts. One, I don't like to be cold either. It hurts my hands. Give me some warm socks and gloves. I don't like any of that. Here's the other thing. There was a time early in his career, Mike, when Kyler Murray was not comfortable in front of the media and maybe not very affable. He's kind of owned it a little bit. He's really coming into his own as just like a personality, and that's pretty cool to see.
Mike, what's Joe Burrow doing this week?
Joe Burrow, now Ian, behind the scenes, Ian's like, a lot of these gifts that the quarterbacks give their offensive line, Ian's always like, these are promotional things they get for free. They're re-gifts, basically. Not this one. There's no way Joe Burrow got authentic Japanese katana swords for free. He surely paid for them. This is a great gift here. I don't know if it's legal. I assume it's legal. I guess you can just have a sword without, I have no idea. But I thought of the end of Kill Bill and what happens to Lucy Liu if it's an authentic Hattori Hanzo sword.
What happens? I haven't seen that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was Mike talking? I lost. I think we lost Mike. Stop. Mike, you're in the Matrix. Goodbye, everybody. We're back tomorrow. See ya.